Good morning. I'd like to welcome you to Calvary Chapel. If you're visiting for the first time, we're glad you're here. If you've come with a friend, man, we're excited that you've joined us. We are here this morning to celebrate the greatest event that has taken place in all of history. Now there's been some pretty significant events that have taken place in history, hasn't there? I was just kind of jotting down a few. The ocean voyages, just think about how significant that was in that day. Railways, going from one end of the earth to the other, were able to transport, and it changed the culture, the society that we live in. The Wright brothers taking flight for the very first time. Man going to the moon, right? I mean, those are pretty significant events. A couple of the cultural masterpieces that has taken place in man's history. When you look at Leonardo da Vinci's Mona Lisa, you look at Michelangelo's Pieta. Have you guys ever looked at the Pieta? It's an incredible statue. And here's the statue. It's Mary holding Jesus after he had been crucified. And in his mind, this is what he was trying to depict. Human love and divine love. As the Savior of the world came into this earth to rescue us from sin. And that's divine love. And then his mother having to watch him endure that. And the extent of human love. All pictured in that one statue. Shakespeare. And the list goes on and on, just the great works that have taken place in human history. I think of our nation, the great experiment, right? Never before was there a nation that made a declaration of independence and declared that man has the right to be free. That's pretty significant. And you and I are still part of that experiment. That we have a freedom that much of the world doesn't enjoy. I think of those words in the Declaration where it says, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they're endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among them are life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness. Those are transforming words as our nation began. And those were all significant achievements, accomplishments, but none of them can even compare to the achievement that you and I celebrate this morning. Why is that? And yes, because this one achievement is able to change your current situation and your eternal situation. It doesn't just last as long as you live this earth. It lasts beyond the grave. That's why this supersedes all of them. They all pale in comparison to what you and I are gathered today to celebrate. Because that day was a day that was like no other. You see, there was a man from Galilee who was claiming to be the Messiah. He preached about the kingdom of God. He told of his death before he died, how he would die. He goes into Jerusalem knowing what he was going to do. He's arrested, he's crucified, and he's placed in a tomb. And 3 days later, he defeats death and is alive forevermore. Guys, that is just unheard of, right? We kind of like, you read the Bible, like Lazarus raised from the dead. Yeah, but he died again. The little kid that was raised from the dead by Elijah, but he died again. Jesus rose from the grave, and he's seated at the right hand of the Father right now. He was seen by over 500 witnesses, people who saw him face to face after that death. That's significant. You might be asking the question, well, what does that have to do with me? Or what about now? What effect does that have upon my own life? The Bible tells us that by his dying on the cross, being the only sinless sacrifice that was ever offered, it was sufficient to deliver all of us who put their faith in him from the power of death. That's why it's important to you. That's why for thousands of years, 2,000 years, we've been celebrating this day, because you and I, because of it, do not have to fear death. We don't have to fear the grave. Matter of fact, there's an amazing passage in the book of Hebrews. Hebrews was written to the Jewish people, but in that he's kind of laying out for us the significance of Jesus and his death and his resurrection. It says in Hebrews 2:9, it says, "But we see Jesus, who was made a little lower than the angels for the suffering of death, crowned with glory and honor." Now he's saying, look, we see this Jesus who was made a little lower than the angels. Matter of fact, he became one of us. And the scripture says he suffered death with glory and honor. And then it says this, guys, and this passage just blows my mind. He says that he, by the grace of God, might taste death for everyone. That's the significance. You see, because Adam and Eve sinned, our fathers, our forefathers, because they sinned, sin was passed to us. You're tainted. I'm tainted with this disease. It's called sin. It's hereditary. Your mama had it, and your grandma had it, and your great-grandma had it, and everyone down to Adam and Eve had it. You're automatically born with it. And Jesus came to defeat the power of sin over a person's life. The power of sin is death. And he says he tasted death for everybody that puts their faith in him. He tasted death for you. You don't have to taste death any longer because of what Jesus accomplished on the cross. And then he goes and he proves that what he said was true by rising from the dead. That's the significance of the day that we celebrate. And it's incredible because, no other religious leader even attempted to make that kind of a claim. And no other religious leader was able to accomplish what only Jesus could accomplish. Not Buddha, not Krishna, not Muhammad, not any other religious leader. Only Jesus was able to defeat death. That makes him the Savior. That makes him the one who has power over the grave. And that's what this is all about. This is why we gather together. Not just here, guys, throughout the globe. In Ukraine, they're gathering to worship Jesus in the middle of war. I saw some video, just in close quarters, just acknowledging that I don't have to fear death any longer. What a great accomplishment! Because fear is a very powerful emotion. You and I, for the last couple of years, have experienced fear like we've never had to experience fear. We've experienced the threat of death, this whole virus that was unleashed on us, and because of it, we've all had to take an evaluation. I know about you, I did. I had to sit down and say, "Am I ready?" If and the way it was first brought out to us is that if you catch it, you're pretty much dead. Right? That's pretty much how it was propagated. It was if you catch corona, baby, you better get ready to die. And that kind of fear is able to shake us, cause us to do things that we would normally not do. And that fear was used throughout the globe. Think about China. Do you guys see the stuff going on in Australia? The stuff going on in Canada? They were arresting pastors because they wanted to still congregate. We've even some of that in our own backyard here in the U.S. of A., haven't we? Where we were told that if you gather together, that you're gonna be not only a super spreader, but you were going to be under the threat of fines and all kinds of retaliation for doing so, right? And that fear, it grips you. You kind of like, man, I don't want to be in a crowd. We were told that you can't even sing. Don't worship. But if they're protesting, that's okay. Right? Remember that? And you realize that this whole idea of fear is able to grip us. It's able to debilitate us. It's able to keep us from doing what it is that we've been called to do, what we were created to do. It's called, and I've heard this phrase several times in the last couple years, but it was given the title fear porn. Because it's so addicting. This is how it works. You kind of embrace the fear, and then they just keep propagating more fear, and now you're addicted to it. You got to go back and turn the tube back on to find out what happened today. And it just kind of builds and it builds and it builds, and the more that you buy into it, the more fear overtakes you. And we're in a position where fear can cause some crazy things to happen in our own lives. The fear of living a free life, the fear that comes with failing, the fear that comes with family and friends that are going to be upset with you or mad at you if you do things that aren't acceptable to them. I had a conversation with a woman just a few months ago. She was telling me that, man, I want to ask Jesus into my heart. I want to become a Christian, but I'm afraid to do so because my mom and my dad are going to be so angry with me that I'll just wait until they die. That was her fear. She was afraid that she would be ostracized from her own parents if she received Christ as her Lord and Savior. Fear is powerful. You see, bullies use fear. Isn't that the tactic of a bully? They just tell you, I'll beat you up if you don't give me your lunch money. And then they take your $2 because you don't want to get beat up. With inflation, it's $5 now, just so you know. Bullies are making out. Our government has used fear, but let me tell you where it all stems from. The Bible tells us that Satan uses fear to keep us in bondage. And the greatest fear that you and I have to battle with is this fear of death. And all of us, every one of us, are susceptible to it. You may think, well, I'm not afraid to die. Well, that's how you feel now. But there's going to come a time when you're going to have to deal with the fact that there's something beyond the grave, that there's something outside of human existence. And I think that's why what Jesus accomplished for us on the cross and proving that he did so by rising from the dead is the most significant event that ever took place. There was a philosopher in the 18th century. His name was Edmund Burke. You may have heard of Edmund Burke. He was a famous philosopher. He said this: "No passion so effectually robs the mind of all of its powers of acting and reasoning as fear." Let me read that again. No passion so effectually robs the mind of all of its powers of acting and reasoning as fear. You see, fear can debilitate you, just keep you bound. And Jesus came into the world to defeat death and to give life. That's what we're told. Jesus in John chapter 10, in the 9th verse, this is how Jesus said it. He says, I am the door. If anyone enters by me, he will be saved. And I will go in and out and find pastures. The thief does not come except to steal and to kill and to destroy. I've come that you may have life, that you may have it more abundantly. I'm the good shepherd. The good shepherd gives his life for the sheep. Isn't that a great passage? Jesus is telling us, look, I came into the world so that you can live life and you can live an abundant life. You don't have to be bound by fear. You don't have to fear the grave. You don't have to fear death. You can live a life without being debilitated by fear. That's the significance of what Jesus did. He came into this world so that you can have life, so that he would lead you into good pastures. And that he did so by giving his life for the sheep. You see, Jesus pictures himself as a shepherd protecting his sheep. That's us. You're the sheep. And your shepherd gave his life for you. Matter of fact, he says that he became the lamb to be sacrificed so that you didn't have to be. That's an incredible picture. When Paul was writing to young Timothy in 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 7, he says, for God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. You see, fear is not from God. That's the devil. That's how he robs and steals and kills and destroys. He uses fear to do it. But Jesus came into this world so that you would have power, so that you would have love, and that you would have a sound mind, not a mind that is just debilitated because of fear. And Jesus came so that you and I could be free, that you can live free. In the book of 1 John chapter 4, I love this passage in verse 18. Watch what it says. There is no fear in love, but perfect love casts out fear, because fear involves torment. But he who fears has not been made perfect in love. Fear involves torment. And you know, this is the picture. And I think for us this morning, as we're looking at this passage, as we're looking at, you know, this event was able to deliver us from even having an inkling of fear of what's in the other side. What's to come? Because Jesus proved that he defeated the grave, that he defeated death. When I was thinking about just this morning's message, there was one passage that just stuck out. And if you have a Bible, I'm going to ask you to turn here with me. Hebrews chapter 2, verse 14. If you don't have a Bible, underneath the seat in front of you, you're welcome to join along. There's a Bible sitting there waiting for you. Hebrews chapter 2, beginning in verse 14. It says, inasmuch then as the children have partaken of flesh and blood, he himself, Jesus himself, likewise shared in the same. And what the writer of Hebrews is declaring is that deity became flesh, the incarnation of Jesus Christ, that God became a man, became one of us. And he says in that second part of verse 14, that through death, he might destroy him who had the power of death. Check this out. That is the devil. He came to destroy him who had the power of death. Who's that? The devil. Because the devil deceived Adam and Eve and continues to deceive us. It keeps us in bondage. It keeps us in this breaking of a relationship with the Creator who loves us. And Jesus came into the world so that you don't have to be in bondage any longer. You can be free from the bondage of Satan and the fear of death. Matter of fact, look at verse 15. And this is it right here. Watch this. And he came to release those who through fear of death were all their lifetime subject to bondage. He came to release those who through the fear of death were all their lifetime subject to bondage. You see, our whole life played out. Man, we're continually thinking about death. When I remember when my first daughter was born, we had a lot of complications during my wife's pregnancy. And we had lost our first child through a miscarriage, and now we're going through the whole pregnancy, and we're just going, Lord, please, the fear that we were going to lose this child was there, and then she had all of these complications, and it was just this constant fear, and then they begin to grow up. Okay, they survive that. And then, whenever they're asleep and they're infants, you're checking them every 2 seconds. Do you guys ever do that? Are they still breathing? Is there still life? You hear about crib death and all of these, tragedy, and it's constant, this constant fear of death. And then they become teenagers, and you're like constantly, every time you hear an ambulance go by, oh, I hope that wasn't my son. Oh, I hope that wasn't my daughter. Because we're in this bondage to the fear of death. And then we start getting a little older, and you start to go, man, my clock's running out. And you realize that, death is right around the corner. And for those who don't have Christ, man, I can't imagine how you survive through life, how you make it through life. It's a constant, and it's just like the writer here says, it's a constant bondage. Because you don't know what tomorrow's going to bring. And Jesus came to release you from the bondage. He came to release you from that grip that the devil has on you. That's the amazing thing about this day. It's why we celebrate. It's why we sing from the top of our lungs that Jesus defeated death. He is risen indeed. That's what makes this day significant. Because I don't have to fear death anymore. I'm ready to go. I don't have a death wish. I want to see my grandkids, and I want to see my great grandkids. That's not my issue. My issue is if the Lord were ready to take me home, man, I am ready to go home. Because I have that assurance that what Jesus did on a cross for me 2,000 years ago is sufficient to take me into eternity. Not because I'm good enough, because that's not the case. I fail every day. I sin every day. But I know this, man. My Savior paid the price for sin on Calvary's cross. That's the hope. That's what you and I hold on to. The devil wants you to stay in bondage. He wants you to remain in that place of fear. And let me just say, without Jesus, death is a scary thing. Without Jesus, I don't even know how you function. Let me tell you one of the things Jesus said. Matthew chapter 25 and verse 41, there's a passage, and this one passage has always struck me. And the reason it strikes me is because Jesus is talking about a day when he's going to judge the world. And here's what he says concerning that moment and that time. He will say to those who on his left hand, those who rejected Christ, the only hope for salvation, he's going to say to those on his left hand, depart from me, you cursed, into everlasting fire that's prepared for the devil and his angels. Wow. You know what the Bible tells us? Is that God didn't create hell for man. He created hell for the devil and the fallen angels who followed him. But if you want to follow the devil, stay in bondage to the devil, then you'll follow them right to the place that they're going. Everlasting fire. That's how the Bible describes it. There should be fear of death if you don't have a Savior. That's a reasonable fear if you don't have a Savior. And that God never created that for us. He loves us. He came into the world to purchase us with his own blood. That's why his death is so significant. That's why him rising from the dead is so amazing, is because he came to rescue the sinner. And you need to be rescued. I need to be rescued. I need God to deliver me from the power of death, to release me from the bondage that I was at one time subjected to. And you too can be released from the bondage, from the fear of death, simply by receiving the free gift that God has offered his Son Jesus to come and cleanse you and to fill you with his Spirit so that now you become a child of God. There's an incredible account in the book of Revelation. And the book of Revelation is telling us about the things that are taking place not only in heaven, but in the days after Jesus takes his church to heaven. Beginning in chapter 6 is when the 7 years that are described of great tribulation coming upon the earth. And the Bible describes it as the wrath of God being poured out upon a world that's rejected him. But before that event described for us, in chapter 5, there's a scene in heaven that you and I get privy to. It's kind of like you get a little glimpse of what's happening in heaven. And in chapter 5, and if you have a Bible, join me there. I think it's a place that, man, just incredible insight into what's to come. Check this out. Revelation chapter 5, verse 1. Watch what he says. And I saw in the right hand of him who sat on the throne a scroll, written inside and on the back, sealed with 7 seals. And I saw a strong angel proclaiming with a loud voice, "Who is worthy to open the scroll and to loose its seals?" Now, this picture in heaven, it's the Father, God, sitting on the throne, and he has a scroll in his hand. And the angel's asking, who's worthy to open up that scroll? Now, it's been described as the title deed of the earth. That scroll. When man sinned against God, he lost the right to God. He forfeited that right and gave it to Satan. And God still had the title deed in his hand, and the angel's going, who's worthy to open that seal? Notice the next verse. And no one in heaven or on earth or under the earth was able to open the scroll or to look at it. So I wept much because no one was found worthy to open and read the scroll or to look at it. John, the beloved, is there, and he's watching this play out, and he realizes no one's able to open the scroll. We're in trouble. We got issues here. And he begins to weep as a result of it. He goes, what do we do now? And as he's weeping, watch this, one of the elders said to him, "Do not weep. Behold, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the Root of David, has prevailed to open the scroll and to loose its 7 seals. And I looked, and behold, in the midst of the throne and of the 4 living creatures, and the midst of the elders, stood a lamb as though it had been slain, having 7 horns and 7 eyes, which are the 7 spirits of God sent out into all the earth. And he came and he took the scroll out of the right hand of him who had sat on the throne. And when he had taken the scroll, the 4 living creatures, the 24 elders, they fell down before the Lamb, each having a harp and golden bowls full of incense, which is the prayer of the saints. Then he says this, they sang a new song. Now, if you put your faith in Jesus, it'd be good for you to memorize this song. You're going to be singing it one day. You're going to kind of be in that number. We're going to be just there all together, and the choir is going to go off, and this is how the song's going to go. You are worthy to take the scroll, to open its seals, for you were slain and have redeemed us to God by your blood out of every tribe, tongue, people, and nation. Wow. That's the scene in heaven, guys. That's what John's describing for us. That Jesus was able to take the scroll. Who was it? The Lamb that was slain. Who was it? It was the Lion from the tribe of Judah. That's Jesus. It was the root of David, the lineage, the kingship of David. That's Jesus. And he was the only one who was able to take that scroll. And the reason that he could take the scroll, he tells us, is because he shed his blood on Calvary's cross. He purchased us back. That's what redemption means. It means that you had a debt and you couldn't pay it, but someone comes along and pays your debt for you. You've been redeemed. And the moment you put your faith in Jesus Christ, the moment you acknowledge, I'm a sinner and I need a Savior, then you also are a beneficiary of the redemption of Jesus Christ. That's the hope. That's the gospel. That he's redeemed you. He purchased you with his own blood. And he validated that what he did was sufficient by rising from the grave. The gospel message. You can live free from the consequence of sin. You can live free from the fear of death. You can live free from the wiles of the devil. I mean, think about it. I mean, that alone right there, you're just like, man, that's an incredible feat that Jesus accomplished. The most significant event in all of history, that he was able to defeat Satan on Friday, and he proved it on Sunday. Amazing. We talked about fear a little bit. Let me tell you, not all fear is bad. Matter of fact, there's one fear that's good. The book of Proverbs, chapter 1, verse 7 says this, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. The fear of the Lord. Because if you fear the Lord, you don't have to fear anything else. Once you fear the Lord, nothing else is able to cause you to fear. Jesus said it like this, and we'll close right here. Matthew chapter 10, the 27th verse, Matthew 10:27, it simply says this. Whatever I tell you in the dark, speak in the light. This is Jesus talking to disciples. He goes, whatever I tell you, we're in a kind of a private meeting. I want you to go and repeat it in a greater audience. Speak it in the light. Whatever you hear in the ear, preach on the housetop. He's saying, get the message out. And then he says these words, and do not fear those who kill the body, but cannot kill the soul, but rather fear him who's able to destroy both soul and body in hell. Wow. You want to fear something? Fear God. Make him the one thing that you go, man, I fear the Lord. Not in the fear where you cower from him, but that you realize that he's the creator. He's worthy of all of our praise, and he came into this world because he loved us, and he gave his life on our behalf. And because of it, man, I want him to be the one who's the master of my life. The one who I bring myself under subjection to, the one who I follow and reverence and acknowledge that he is worthy of all the praise I could ever bring him. And he's worthy of my life. As I offer my life to him and say, God, I don't want to live for me anymore. And I surely don't want to live for the devil anymore. And I don't want to live for this world anymore. I want to live my life for you from here forward. And my prayer this morning, man, if you have yet to do that, that this morning would be the day that you pass from death to life. Today would be the day where you make a conscious decision. You know what? I want to follow Jesus. I don't care what anybody thinks about me. I don't care about my boyfriend or my girlfriend, my husband, my wife. I don't care about, my culture or my friends or what anybody else thinks. You see, what kept me back from following the Lord for so many years? Because I was afraid that if once I became one of those Jesus freaks, that I wasn't going to have any more friends. I did. I like, man, what am I going to do? I'm going to be one of those goody two-shoes? Just walk around and, no one's going to like me, and I'm not going to have no one, no friends around me. And, let me tell you something, man, and that life was going to be boring. I've lived the most exciting life following Jesus that I've ever lived. I have. Because I entered the battle. And there's a battle raging right now, guys. And the battle's for the souls of men. And you can enter the battle too. You want to live an exciting life? You want to live a life that goes against the grain? A life that you are able to make a difference that's not just going to last in this lifetime, but last into eternal life? Man, you get right with God. You begin to say, God, take my life and use it for your glory, and you will live the most amazing life you would ever dream of. Because God's got plans for those who are willing to live their life for him. We're going to close in a word of prayer now. And if you're here this morning and you have yet to give your life to Jesus Christ, you have to say, God, I'm a sinner. I know that. And I don't want death to be something that I even consider again. I want to be able to live a life that's in a right relationship with you. That's as simple as you coming and saying, God, come in and fill me with your Spirit. Guide my life, direct my life from here forward. And today will be a resurrection day for you, because you will have spiritual life come and live inside of you right now as you ask him to come in and be your Lord and Savior. The worship team's going to come out. We're going to pray, and then we're going to give you an opportunity, man. If you don't know Jesus as your Lord and Savior, maybe you've come to church and you haven't been to church for a long time because you got sucked back into this world and the devil's bondage again. I'm going to ask that this morning, if you're ready to come back, come home. If you're ready to say, God, I'm tired of trying to do this without you, I'm going to invite you as well this morning to take that step of faith and say, God, I'm ready for you to be the Lord of my life. I want to repent. I want to turn from my own sin. I want to live my life for you. Father, we thank you for this time that you've given us. We thank you for, God, your goodness to us. And that today we celebrate that you defeated the grave, but you also defeated the devil. And that, God, you've given us a freedom. That's a free gift to anyone who would come and acknowledge their need for it. And so, Father, I pray your Holy Spirit would fall upon us today. And God, this would be the day, God, where we would finally respond to your calling upon our life. But we're going to take a moment here, man, and just have an opportunity. Jesus said this, if you confess me before men, I'll confess you before my Father who's in heaven. But if you deny me before men, I'll deny you before my Father. You see, Jesus is looking for us to make a public proclamation, to make an acknowledgement. You know what? I'm ready to live my life for him. It doesn't matter what you've done, no matter how bad you think you've been or how good you think you are, man, you need a Savior. Would you come as we worship the Lord? Just stand and come, man. Let's worship.
Christ is my reward in all of my devotion. And now there's nothing in this world that could ever satisfy. Oh, through every trial, my soul will sing, no turning back. I've been set free, and Christ is enough for me. Yes, Christ is enough for me, and everything I need is in you. It's everything I need.
If there's anybody else, God's still speaking to your heart. Maybe right now, man, you're wrestling. It's a spiritual war. It's a battle. Come. God bless you guys. Awesome. We see that little cartoon, the little devil on one side and an angel on the other side, one saying, just do it, and the other one's going, don't do it. Today, that same battle is taking place. It's spiritual. And God is trying to draw you. He's trying to pull you. He's trying to get you to that place where you finally say, okay, God, I hear you. I surrender to you. What he uses is the Holy Spirit of God. And what he does is he convicts us. He shows us, you know what? You need that. You need that for your life. You need the hope. You need the forgiveness that only God can provide you. That's the God's Spirit, and it's speaking that to your heart right now. And your heart is racing because of it. He's trying to pull you. I remember sitting in that seat right where you were, and I was trying to hold on to the seat because there was something trying to nudge me and pull me. Until I finally said, okay, God, I hear you. I'm done. And there may be some of you still sitting in that seat and you're holding on. Man, just surrender. Just surrender. That's all you got to do is say, God, I give. I give. I want what you've offered me. Eternal life. Forgiveness of sin. And how can I turn that down? I'm going to ask that the team would just sing that chorus just one more time through. If you're still sitting, you're out in the foyer, you're here in the sanctuary, and you're just, man, wrestling. Maybe you're thinking, well, my husband goes, I'll go. If my wife goes, then I'll go. Don't worry about them. That's between them and the Lord. Forget them. Worry about the Lord. Not about your boyfriend or your girlfriend. It's not about your friends. It's about you and Jesus, man. That's what counts. And so as we sing this chorus, if you're still there wrestling with it, man, surrender. Come. Just like all of these this morning, man, come. Come. We would love to pray with you. We're going to say a simple prayer by faith to God in a moment here. If there's still any of you sitting and still God's nudging you, man, don't give. Don't walk away from here without taking that free gift he's offered you. It's worship.
Christ is enough for me. Yes, Christ is enough for me. And everything I need is in you. It's everything I need. I have decided to follow Jesus. No turning back. decided to follow Jesus. No turning back, no turning back. The cross before me, the world behind me. No turning back, no turning back. The cross before me, the world behind me. No turning back, no turning back. No turning back, no turning back. No turning back, no turning back.
Amen. God bless you guys. That is so awesome. We're gonna say a prayer, and this prayer is your prayer. As you, by faith, say these words to God, I'm just gonna help you through it. And what you're declaring is that you want Him to be the master of your life and wash you clean right now in His eyes. And so let's go before Him together. Would you pray with me from your heart, with your mouth, man, to God? Would you pray this? Dear God, I confess to you I'm a sinner. I thank you for sending Jesus, that He died and He rose, and that He defeated death. God, would you fill me with your Holy Spirit? Would you guide and direct my life? I surrender it to you right now. And I ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen.